you're coming up against even lock, because that'll help you to play around the file, it'll help you to get your stuff out of range of Hellfire clears, and the Murloc Tycaller really is the mana worm of this deck if you want to look at it that way, and it's still playable for 1, which is why we're seeing people switch over to this deck.
Yeah, as Hearthstone has evolved over the years, the power of, and it's literally the reason that Mana Worm was gone, is the power level of 1-drops has diminished quite dramatically from the olden days a few years back, and Murloc Tycaller is definitely one of the more powerful ones that you probably remember from the Murloc Paladin days not too long ago.
Sorry, straight away, deep in the tank space. So, do we tap on 1, guys? Yes, we do. Alright, glad we talked that out.
This is the intricacies of playing as a team, because you might feel, on the other hand, just forced to discuss every play, which sometimes can just lose you time. We've seen in HGG a lot of rope burning going on that has caused some mishaps happen. Let's see what the options are for Team Spain. Vulgar Homunculus does line up very, very well versus this Tycaller.
It does. Mage and New Zealand do actually have decent game against this, though. It's not the most explosive start, but, you know, Coin Seer into Seer potentially just to buff up this Murloc Tycaller nice and big, and then get that Megasaur to potentially land on that entire juicy board. Could deal with this, but the Homunculus is a roadblock at least for a turn or two.
And also, so we can see that Defile is in the hand for Spain, so even if Homunculus doesn't get a kill, maybe it can set up some kind of Defile board through just the natural trades that are going to happen, because it has Taunt. So, maybe some Fury protect this turn after the tap, depending. Could come down just to say it's actually just a 2-3 that needs to help chip away these Murlocs. Because I struggle to see the plan where it's like, no, I need to save some Fury for late game for a Taunt. Because often if it gets to that point where you're in trouble, there are too many big Murlocs on the board that just power through a Taunt anyway.
Yeah, as it stands, just adding the Sun Fury to this board kind of deals with the Tycaller naturally, right? Like if it trades into the 2-4, then you have another 2-3 in play. And also, if you're planning to Spellbreaker the next turn, then having that extra power on board is great anyway, because then you can try and take your swing turn very early with the Spellbreaker, right? Like you remove some kind of big buff that comes down this turn, be it second Cold Light Seer or whatever else, and then you have this full power in play that you can then dish out and try and actually swing the board state towards what is in this matchup the control deck very early.
Yeah, and then we see Cold Light Seer number 2 in New Zealand fans, although we said, yeah, these trades line up. It's like, well, they don't have to. Because the Cold Light Seer is going to buff the health again of the Murlocs on board, and it does mean you're able to get pretty decent trades, or at least get through this Homunculus while surviving at a bare minimum. So New Zealand can keep the pressure on. But already you can see just the delay and the pause when Cold Light Seer looks so obvious. There are queries over, well, actually, is Oracle Ping ever a better choice?
And I think one of the things they're considering is just, do they have a particularly sad time against Hellfire if they do this? And the answer is, unfortunately, yes. There's not really a lot they could have done about that, though. There's no real way to play around it, because both minions that they're trying to trade into have 2 attack, and it's just the way that the numbers will line up. They'll be very pleased to see that Spain, in fact, do not have the Hellfire available, and I love pushing 3 there, because, again, in the world where Hellfire comes down, that trade has to happen.
Da hat jemand gerade Graumine gezogen.
Yeah, these types of moments are just when you actually just bank.
Dann noch so schön golden.
Right? You gain 3 damage from nothing, because the outcome is going to end up exactly the same. Turn 4, good Team Spain, though, doesn't really look too great because of the lack of development that could come from a board play.
Was machst du jetzt?
And then anything else not really getting too much of a job done because of the 3 health on these Cold Light Seers. As you mentioned, Spellbreaker into trade for the Tycaller, which is the scary minion right now on board, does get work done, but this Spellbreaker's already dead, it just doesn't know it yet. So, see what the options are now. New Zealand, that
Na klar, 2 Feuerbälle parat.
Maybe allow for some good trades, or Divine Shield pushes maybe.
Yeah, Divine Shield wouldn't be bad here. But this is the curve that I kind of outlined right from turn 1, really, that they had this Coin Seer into Megasaur kind of line. You've seen that AK Wonder and Spain have had about the best resistance to this as they could have asked for, apart from that turn 4 Hellfire, which would
What the fuck?
Still, New Zealand are able to force through a ton of damage here. Lands the Wind Fury on both Seers, and with 2 Fireballs in hand, Raven, I think there was
Alter, schon auf 13 geprügelt, der hat noch volle Leben, ey.
No, not at all. Sometimes you play, it becomes very simple at certain moments playing an aggressive deck. It's like,
Geht bei manchmal.
do this, can I just kill my opponent next turn? And at this point, Feels like a strong yes, because it's not so much that there aren't tools for Spain.
Warum
it's
sich
that
schon die
there's
Heiratspapiere
no money to get it
beantragen?
done. You can't do anything each turn to stop just fireball into
Warum jetzt
fireball.
Tint umsonst?
This play from New Zealand basically says to Spain, you're going to need two pretty specific cards to deal with this here. You need a board clear or a big taunt plus healing to be able to get out of this situation.
Warum willst du was heiraten, ey?
Scheinbar.
Ich könnte einer Seele schon heiraten. Nicht die, die ich zuerst heiraten wollte, aber es die schon am höchsten ist am Ende.
Mhm.
It is, and as I said, the mana limitations on Spain, well, they also apply to New Zealand, because it means that they can actually, or they can't, should I say, can't just double fireball in the same turn, right? So, we need to spread this damage out. They do still have some Murlocs on board, but this
Junge, du bist ganz schön vollgepackt mit Karten. Wenn du nicht gleich was machst, dann bist du am Arsch.
Spain might say, okay, this is the window now, the safety window we need to actually get something done.
Hat sogar den Lichtkönig auf der Hand, ey.
So again, the constant question for Spain is, can they get that turn where they not only remove the threats from New Zealand, but they develop something on the board to try and get some initiative back? Because there's only so long they can really defend for.
It does mean now that any board New Zealand develop, they'll be saying to themselves, well, okay, if a Hook Reaver comes down now, we have the mana to Fireball King. So any board that we develop is weight gold at this point, because we can actually push that board through the big taunt that the opponent might have.
Hellfire, ach du Heiliger.
It's definitely hard to navigate from Spain here, because Hellfire now, because of that amalgam, doesn't do enough. It actually just pushes the same amount of
Junge, du könntest in 2-3 Runden weg sein, wenn du nicht gleich vorbeisteuerst. Bei Gute.
It's why the amalgam was such a good draw on the previous turn, because there really aren't that many minions in this deck that don't die to Hellfire without some kind of buff landing on them, and with both of the Cold Light Oracles and a Megasaur used in the early turns from New Zealand, any minion being drawn was going to be quite weak and innocuous at this point. Amalgam was about as good as it got.
It was, and it's also just a lose-lose situation, I would say, for Spain, because, okay, say they kill a minion or Hellfire heal somehow, or just play the Spellstone, well, then Oracle makes up a lot of the damage because it buffs all the Murlocs with +1 attack anyway. So it means that, well, they kind of just gain the damage you spent your turn removing, and they still have 2 fireballs. They're still going to just put them to face pretty soon.
There is that 7/7, as I mentioned, this is why the board development was so strong on the previous turn.
Okay.
And now New Zealand do have a long game, but I don't think they'll be quite as excited about that LNF as you might think, because their plan A right now is to win the game with these 2 fireballs. I think that LNF has to be a plan B at this point.
Yeah, I think the excitement comes from probably, I think New Zealand are going, well, if this doesn't work, if they have it, if they have something that allows them to survive, well, we can just say, right, okay, I'll draw my deck and then beat that. It's a very, very nice plan B.
So New Zealand here considering sacking the Murloc instead of pinging so that they can develop a Grimscale Oracle instead. Yeah, like that is what they're going to go for. It's all considering
because they could have pinged instead and saved the Murloc, but they still end up with a 1/1 on board.
Gar nicht mehr dran gedacht, ey, dass ich den hab so laufen lassen, ey. Ich wollte den ausladen lassen, ey. Mein Gott, das Ding erschreckt mal einen hier, ey.
So if that comes down here by pushing through this extra damage, they give themselves a more secure lethal through the Spellstone with Fireball Ping and the remaining minion attacks on the next turn.
Yeah, I think it's just a very well played game from New Zealand in the fact that they've gone. There is too many.
Junge, du kannst auch gleich aufgehen, du hast nur noch 4 Punkte. Ich glaube kaum, dass noch irgendeiner deiner Megakarten noch irgendwas bewirken soll jetzt.
Quick glance at, to Spain going, do they look happy? Do they look okay? Are they worried? If they're worried, then okay, we might go 1-0 up in this series.
Yeah, Jack Attack saying to Ting Tong right now, how's your lip reading?
Yeah, imagine if they trained.
Follow-up question, how's your lip reading in Spanish?
Well, that's going deep.
Yeah.
Ziemlich beschissene Notlösung, mein Lieber. Also hätte ihr echt besser steuern könntet. Neuseeland gewinnt. Yay.
You sold already.
Yeah, one game, one win. Und introduced.
Die gerade halt scheiße gefallen.
Ja.
Matchups favorite.
The big one. It's the Shadowwalk Shamans.
He's getting ready now. Jack's one as we get into game number 2.
So.
New Zealand versus Spain. Jack
Hat es jetzt Jäger gegen Schamane. Neuseeländer haben gerade jetzt den Jäger.
Spain's opening though. Kellerson, Earthshock, and the Glacier
Schamane.
Shard.
Mann.
Pretty much as strong as it gets in terms of an opening to compete against the deck that they're up against. Just to cover some of the tech options or the flex cards. New Zealand are going with a charge kind of the floating beast spot in terms of their hunter decks. So it's where you sometimes see a high main, it's where you sometimes even now see Swamp King Dread.
I approve that one actually. That's got the Raven seal of approval as far as I'm concerned. But we're going to see the tracking in. It's a bit of a tough call to be completely honest, because two of these cards you don't naturally assume a good versus Shadowwalk, although Flanken Strike does have a lot of value because of
Ja.
drinkers, Saronite, Chain
Entscheidung.
allow you, even though it's just a 3/3, to be able to push some damage. Charge Devil Sword, nice, but not nice enough. You really want that from Katharina.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you get one of those big beasts in your tracking pool, it always feels bad not to take it, because whether you take it or not, it's gone.
Prinz
right?
Kellerset wird ausgespielt.
It's not a Stitch Tracker.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes you kind of get this mentality where, well, I want to use that
Ja,
card at some
typisch
point in
Vampire.
this game, but it's just not a strong card when played from hand. Right.
Immer das Gleiche.
Speaking of cards though, I do like Sandbinder. It's a card that was in the earlier versions of Shadowwalk. It kind of fell out of favor a little bit, but I really like the power of you either draw Grumble with it or you draw Glacial Shard, which yes may not be the Grumble power level, but it is got high power level itself of just stalling out some of the more aggressive decks. And although Death Rattle Hunter might not be truly classed as an aggressive deck, it does just stop high amounts of damage coming in, as they're normally 5/5s you're looking at trying to deal with. Oh, nice King Crush as well. I don't think there's any gonna be bursty kills happening from New Zealand anytime soon.
There is not. There's a Witchwood Grizzly in hand as well, so New Zealand are getting very close to that position where Katharina could end up being an 8-mana 6/6.
Yeah, Team New Zealand will just be hoping they just don't see another Grizzly the rest of this game, because you really just, even if Katharina doesn't death rattle into a beast, you want at least the first one. If it's the first one, then it's good enough, because then you can maybe mess around with the cube, because even cubing Katharinas isn't that bad, because it creates 6/6s on the board. Like, those are just powerful enough to win games, but you need something to come out from her.
Yeah, that's the key to Katharina in a lot of matchups, really, is that it just puts so much stats onto the board in one go that your opponent can't deal with it, so you get to cube the residual minion.
Yeah, something, right?
It almost doesn't matter what it is, it's such a huge pile of stats that you generate afterwards anyway. Hey, if you get into the dream world and that ends up being King Crush, then fine, you know, we'll take it, but it doesn't have to be to win a lot of matchups.
This, I think for Team Spain, is a very tough turn. Maybe a little bit less tough now. Because they had options, they have Earthshot, they have Glacial Shard, but Glacial Shard versus Shore is limited, because you know the minions you play get Rush anyway, which kind of negates the Shore not being able to attack. I think this is a good middle ground that doesn't commit too many strong answers, as Earthshock is often just too powerful against a cube specifically, or a Katharina if you think the Sea Slap.
Yeah, this Kellerset buff is huge on the Saronite chain gang as well, because playing a Saronite into a Shore, normally you're just going to get dead. You're gobbled up by Flanking Strike on its own. It's just perfect to deal with 2/2/3 chain gangs. The fact this is a 3/4 means Flanking Strike isn't that impressive. Spider Bomb actually doesn't do a great deal either, because the Shore can't really pick up a value trade first to then allow the Spider Bomb to 2-for-1 afterwards.
And also, it's dangerous as well. You just saw New Zealand hover the Spider Bomb, but if you run Spider Bomb in and it kills the same one you went into, the Shore doesn't even kill the one that's left, right? It's very awkward timing. Not just mattered to get, say, the Kellerset down as well, to just make that trade clean and leave Shore alive. This is a risky play from New Zealand, but they have to get something done. They did hit the chain gang they wanted to, but it does come at the cost of Houndmaster Shaw, and now giving a Shudderwock Shaman a free initiative turn with no pressure on board for the Hunter is going to be a little bit risky as far as I'm concerned. We can see another chain gang, Sandbinder to draw, just get Mana Tide down maybe with a hero power. A lot of these options are great because Hunter is not the best at answering annoying minions like Mana Tide.
It's very true. Eaglehorn Bow, very much a card reserved for a secret package deck at this point, so being able to come onto the board and answer key minions from the opponent is not where they excelled, as you mentioned. But New Zealand were looking for a free turn of their own very soon, so for Däumchen and for Spain, they might be better served just playing stats, just so that you know, New Zealand can't use that relinquished pressure just to have a free turn of their own.
Yeah, that's the fear, right? Because you have answers, but you would rather not have to answer the issues such as Cube. Just don't give them anything to Cube, I think is the better result. And they seem to agree they're going for the Saranac Chain Gang, which is buffed by Kelseth for the second time. And then there's a Glacial Shard going down to lock out any weapons, and mainly just to get the dudes on the board, get the battle cries in the bank, and see what can happen going forward. Because I was going to say, a plain Grizzly against, say, Mana Tide would have been pretty good, because we can see no Hex, and then that means maybe Cube next turn on the Grizzly. And once you've got full health Grizzlies on the board, Shaman cannot really do a lot about it. They kind of just have to just hope they survive long enough at that point.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was alluding to on the previous term, where if Spain went for a Mana Tide kind of turn, New Zealand then have a free turn of their own to just play a big minion or whatever they want to develop, and then suddenly Spain just don't have the stats on board to be able to remove it. They have to try and remove it from hand. That ends up being a waste of removal a lot of the time, even if they did have access to it. So this is the play that I advocated for from Däumchen and Spain, which is to just play stats on the board, just keep tempoing. You have Kelseth buff on your deck, which means basically anything that you can play is very, very powerful and a big threat the Hunter has to deal with.
And this is a horrible position for New Zealand. They just played their bit of stats, and it's not even close to dealing with the Shudderwock Shaman board. At this point, these feel like losing games this early, and it makes it sound a bit presumptuous, but both teams are on nearly full health, but you cannot fall behind on board against Shudderwock, because they shouldn't be allowed to be winning this.
Right. And now with the board advantage that they do have, now Spain can start to think about that Mana Tide play, that far side to try and cycle through some of the deck if they need to. Because they are just running low on a few options here. They might just need some kind of power removal play or a quick Shudderwock slash Grumble.
That's quick.
To be able to get over the line. And yes, Raven, 6 mana is significantly quicker than 9.
Yeah. I will say as well, with one of the card draw options, I wouldn't mind the Ooze being paired. Yeah, it looks like Spain agree. Because you don't care about kind of candle shot in this matchup. Get 4 4s on the board and just continue this pressure. You might just win with beatdown at this point. Spain can play Shudderwock next turn and summon, what, how many? 2 more 6/6s? Yep. So there'll be 3 6/6s on the board. Glacial Shard would have gone off to freeze something as well.
Yep.
I think we might just see a stack Shudderwock this turn. Are you feeling it, sort of?
And they get to ooze this weapon anyway.
Yeah, because the use battle cry goes on. Okay, real talk. Are you walking? I think I would, because you've seen how bad their hand is. And you're going into the turn 7 and 8. 7's a weak turn for Hunter. And if they get Katharina out, well, they're dead by then, because the Hunter can't beat 3 6/6s. They don't have the removal.
That's fair. There's a chance that Sandbinder gets them the Grumble at this point, right? So if they were to spend this turn perhaps playing the Sandbinder, get the Grumble in their hand just to kind of shrink that gap, right? So if they have their Shudderwock turn, and if that Shudderwock turn doesn't end up winning the game, let's say New Zealand do have like Hunter's Mark answers to be able to relieve some of the pressure, then at least any remaining Shudderwocks on the board can be grumbled back on the following turn to set up the infinite win condition later.
I think they still win. The best response is Hunter's Mark Deathstalker Rexar. It kills 1 6/6.
I mean, they could have double Hunter's Mark, yes, but I'm not. I agree, I wouldn't
But they
play
can't
around.
play at the same turn.
No, right.
Which is a big deal, right? Oh, 7/7s because of Kelseth. I forgot.
That's true.
And the freeze went on the Grizzly as well. Oh, there's a mind control tech. That's definitely not the worst card in the world to draw. Takes a 7/7, but what about the rest is my question, Sol.
And a good question it is.
Oh.
Flanking strike, just no real impact on this board state whatsoever. New Zealand probably have to play it just to get a 3-3, and they're debating which rather underwhelming target they want to fire it at.
Yeah. I don't know, so I've not got the answer. Maybe should have somehow get any kind of AoE. But maybe that helps if you can survive long enough. It can help, like, the mind control tech plus the flanking strike kills one of the Shadowlocks. Maybe that's enough.
Oh.
And also, there's just the ice shot for the Grizzly.
Yep.
Goodbye, taunt, hello, face.
21 in play right now. Well, that'll do it.
That adds up to lethal to me, so the Earthshock bypassing the massive help from the Grizzly. Life Drinker providing the extra damage, and early Shudderwalks sometimes win games. And Spain even it up versus New Zealand, going 1-1. High fives all around. Get that first point on the board. And now
boah, jetzt haben wir aber niedergemacht, ey.
New Zealand seem to be okay, just saying, well,
1-1.
but Spain
jetzt.
seems to be pretty happy there. And I
It's a little bit of Miracle Rogue back into
Oh,
the
perfekt gleich.
game as well, so there are quite a few rogue options, and there's
Schurke gegen Schurke? Alles klar.
There's Malagos Rogue on top of all of that as well. As a potential option.
Ja, jetzt wird ja lustig.
Quest Rogue.
Yeah, true.
People are still playing it, so.
I mean, still plenty of people have submitted it for this tournament. It's a very real deck still in a lot of matchups. You know, if you have time, you don't need to go infinite with Giggling Inventor to win matchups. You know, that is really your anti-aggro card. So against the control decks, Quest Rogue's still very powerful.
Yeah, we will see what happens in this.
Also, das kann ich nicht entscheiden.
One of the big cards here will just be the weapon for the rogue, because it means that they can
Dort zuletzt.
potentially proc a death rattle, but most importantly, the weapon just deals damage, which is great at removing a lot of these early odd rogue minions outside of a weapon attack hench clan thug, which goes to 4 health, of course, as I'm sure you all at home are very aware of hench clan thug. You've been playing ladder at all in the past few months.
Hench Clan what? Sorry? What's that card do? So, what does it do?
Fire.
I've never encountered that card before in my life.
Well, we'll find out as it's in hand. For Team New Zealand, Patra being the pilot for this one. Riku being the pilot for Spain on this
Boah,
one.
sie hat Van Cleef.
That's gone in and out, I would say, of just, hey, 1-3s are good.
Hat sie schön gerade auf der Hand, ey.
Pretty well so far. It does straight up beat the Firefly 1-1. But now Spain have a few options based off whether they want to particularly eviscerate and clear this up, or more realistically, just get the dagger and start chipping away.
Yeah, New Zealand are playing the full suite of 4 available 1-3s, where they're playing Crystallizer and Diamond, and then on top of that, they're playing 2 Argent Squires as well.
There you go.
So they want to have all of the early drop available to them, as many of them as possible, because quite often the debate is, would you rather have additional 1-3s in your deck, right? Like, you have your 2 Diamonds most of the time, and then you're flirting with the idea of, what are my additional 1-drops? Do I want more 1-3s, or do I want 1-1 Divine Shields? New Zealand have gone beyond that and just said, no, we're playing 6, let's go.
I mean, I think a lot of players have gone off the stats.
Irgendwann mal.
Yes, we've ran this, and 1-3s are very, very good. Yeah. And if you can pad that out a little bit more, based on the bans you're going to give as well, then it makes sense to me. I will say as well, this Eviscerate is extremely important, as we mentioned Hench Clan Thug earlier. Often comes out as a 4-4, and Eviscerate lines up very, very well. And it's odd that we see Eviscerate recently now, because as a removal for Hench Clan, because up until very recently, it was always Odd Rogue or Quest Rogue, neither of which run Eviscerate.
Yeah, honestly, 2 of the long-time strongest rogue cards, Eviscerate and Sap, have just become so rare to see in the metagame now, just because of the particular rogue archetypes that have become powerful, not lending themselves to playing those cards for various reasons.
And I think we might actually see the egg get developed here over anything else, because that Flame Elemental is going to need to be kept to either proc Eviscerate next turn on the 3-drop, or just be used later on if not needed to maybe proc the Elven Minstrel. Because the biggest deal against Odd Rogue is you have to beat their turn 3 in some way, and that is often a Vicious Fledgling or a Hinch Clan. This time though, it's going to be a Coin Van Cleef, which does not die to Eviscerate. Very good heads-up play from New Zealand, I would say.
Yeah, and also, going back to the deck building phase as well, I was talking about how many 1-drops they are running in this deck, and then when you're playing that many 1-mana cards, you know, they haven't cut any South Sea deckhands, they haven't cut any Cold Bloods, they haven't cut any Deadly Poisons, they haven't cut any Fireflies, they're all there. So when you're playing that many 1-mana cards, suddenly Edwin Van Cleef, which isn't an automatic inclusion in Odd Rogue, starts to make a lot of sense. And I'm really fascinated by the one-drop debate in Odd Rogue. I think we've talked about it on broadcast several times before.
Many times now.
You know, the Diamond versus Crystallizer versus Argent Squire thing, but I think these days in particular, now Odd Paladin is back, get some 1-3s in your deck, because that Argent Squire is just going to be a 1-2 a lot of the time.
Yeah, New Zealand have solved our debate, all of them. Is the answer, play everything, because early game is what's key here. We see Necreum Blade being drawn for Spain, and that means that on their second swing of the Death Rattle, in case you're not so familiar with this version of Rogue, the second swing procs a Death Rattle on board, similar to Play Dead from Hunter. It's not going to be equipped this time, and instead, Riku and Team Spain are going to get some damage onto this Van Cleef, lining up this Eviscerate, if possible, next turn, to pair with the Blade. Okay, so this is going to be a tough one though. The Fungomancer is not going to be available to actually buff up this Van Cleef, so this is a guaranteed kill. With the Eviscerate next turn, but this is just going to be too much damage.
Not the shield, damit, Achtung, Quest abgeben.
Having a SI7 agent proc with a Firefly or the
1 Stunden Abklingzeiten.
This can be played, the deck
Oh ja.
Kannst du einfach mit denen wieder um dich werfen. Schaman sind ein Vorteil, weil der ruft der an.
Naja, klar. Sag ja, es gibt so viel, was man gar nicht vermisst, ey. Nee, die meisten werden sowieso wieder heulen. Ne? Die werden sowieso wieder alle. Ach, es wird doch zu schwer. Es ist ja schwieriger, als ich es in Erinnerung habe. Ja, weil ihr es alle verlernt habt dann. Damit umzugehen. Weil ihr zu verwöhnt wurdet. Kleine Weicheier.
Protect this Edwin Van Cleef as much as possible. In the end, the Eviscerate is going to be able to take care of it anyway.
Yeah, it does mean that it's going to be clear it up and just make it a little bit safer. But the problem is that New Zealand are just going to be able to just keep piling on this pressure. We talk a lot.
Die vier Spacken sollten generell mal durch die ganzen MMOs ziehen gemeinsam. Ein paar Stunden mal ein MMO spielen. Verschiedene. Das will ich mal sehen.
And then there's still Firefly, there's still SI7 agent to pile on some extra damage. Riku does have that Cavern Shiny Finder to be able to draw another Necreum Blade, but it's just not really needed, it's not really enough. And as a 3-1, it's extremely easy to be able to clear up, and it also can't even be paired with the Elven Minstrel to help draw some better answers to the situation they've got versus New Zealand right now. It looks like Spain is struggling. I talked a little bit earlier that the rope does come into play in this format because not only are you dealing with your own thought patterns and decisions in game, you're dealing with 3 other players that have all of their own thoughts. Maybe they've decided to say, oh, well, actually, I won't make a play until you guys or someone else has signed it off, so to speak. Okay, so Hajus Spy, maybe at this point there's a few too many 1-drops available, as there's effectively 3 in the hand, but still having SI7 agent for an easy clear on that 1-2, or to be honest for me, hero power and just get the henchman thug down finally. Just seen Eviscerate, and that means that this thug is pretty much uncontested, or very likely to be uncontested at least.
Na, was ist denn jetzt los?
Yeah, the Tar Creeper is going to be able to do a pretty decent job at just protecting these 1-drop minions on the board, but I'm very interested to see what New Zealand do here with this 3-drop. There's definitely a lot of discussion going on to try and work out exactly what to do, even if this is slightly off camera, but there's a lot of pointing and there's a lot of messing, but it is Patru who's currently the pilot, and she does have to directly deal with this turn herself. We'll see what it happens. It's like Firefly, Dagger, and Squire.
Bisschen schneller, 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 schneller. Schneller, Kleiner.
I'm just gonna get more stuff than you. And guess what? This deck doesn't really run answers that are relevant here. And we see just mechanical well, SI7 agent.
Da brannte gerade ein bisschen die Luft.
Was für Luft?
Hä? Die musste sich jetzt gerade ein bisschen beeilen, ey. Zu viel Zeit gerissen irgendwie.
Ja, wo ist halt überlegt denn die Schritte?
Ja.
Ist immer lustig, wenn Leute mal vorne rumhalten, nur der andere braucht so lang. Ich halt denken, will, ne? Gelernt sein. Nicht einfach auf den Kopf, Ach ja. Jäger werden dann so klassisch wieder die meistgehassten, wenn sie dir den Mob wegtanken. Schön warten, bis der Respawn da ist. Ich weiß, wir verstehen gar nicht, wie anstrengend Klassik in einer Hinsicht war.
Ja.
Da ist da schon lange gewartet, dann kam so ein anderer Typ und mit dem Mob weg und da musst du schon wieder warten. Nicht der da erst gekommen ist, sondern du wieder.
Ja.
Das war die größte Zeitsenke auch. Es ist immer dieser Arsch gab.
Gut, dass das heute nicht mal so beschissen ist, ey.
Zum Glück gibt für die eigene Fraktion alle drauf. Wenn es ein Festpunkt ist. Oder für die anderen in die Fresse. Das war damals so anstrengend, sag ich dir.
Hm.
New Zealand again deep in the tank, and we maybe saw two very straightforward games earlier from these
Hat man ja schon lieber die Quests gemacht, wenn da irgendwie nichts los ist.
Ja.
Ansonsten tut es wieder irgend so ein Hans Brust.
Ja, schlimmsten sind immer die, die immer ganz schnell mal dabei sind.
They're going to start trying to remove some stuff. The 3-1, very easy to get rid of, even with just an Argent square that's already on board. Daimon doesn't do much to help, even with 9
Das schreit jemand.
Oh, choices here. They look like Team New Zealand are just considering, do we just play the Daimon and get a free dagger up with the push now? Are they just going to dagger up and skip? And it looks like they might even hold everything. They're not going to play the Diamond. I think any other card they could possibly draw is an activator for SI7 agent. So they put Spain to full health. Necri and Vile, well guess what? There are no death rattles that create taunt minions in the deck. So this might just be the end. I don't even think they can draw anything because of the mana cost in the hand for Spain. Necri and Vile, Minstrel. Yes, you could draw some more cards, but no mana left to actually play anything. And it looks like Riku at 97, along with his teammate Spain, are just not going to be able to get it done. They're just going to face tank this and get it out, see what they draw. Alspine player and Leroy was a little bit far away from Leroy finishing up the game. And there's going to be New Zealand go 2-1 up over Spain. But all focused faces across the board there, as this is a pretty big deal for them. This is tournament live. It's just being removed as they just swap through the players. But like I said, this is just tournament live for these teams. Everything on the line here. The loser of this match does go home, and the winners do continue to fight for their lives here at Blizzcon and the Hearthstone Global Games. Be right back with the next match, so don't go anywhere. We'll see who can take the victory and who stays in this tournament.
Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games. New for the second season, we're proud to introduce HGG Cheer. Cheering is a way to show support for players in regions while boosting your presence in chat using bits, a virtual good you can buy on Twitch. Along the way, you'll unlock Hearthstone packs, new Twitch emotes, and a unique card back, while the players earn a share of the revenue. We'll see you in the tavern.
Taking your team to hashtag trending, and spreading memes at tracer level speed.
All while watching us cap the point.
speed like that deserves a network that can keep up. With T-Mobile, get all the Overwatch League you can handle with coast-to-coast coverage. Now your arena is where you make it.
Hello, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Test, can Sottle hear me?
I can hear you. Mic
Okay.
check. 1 2 1 2.
The 2018 Hearthstone Global Games are brought to you in part by Republic of Gamers, Corsair, T-Mobile, Samsung SSD, and NVIDIA.
Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games. We're still continuing the first series of the day between New Zealand and Spain, and hopefully without any more tech issues. We do apologise about that. We know there were some sound issues and you couldn't hear Sottle's lovely voice for just a little bit. but he's back.
Mic check, 1 2. No, we're good. It turns out after I was talking about how we don't really see sap in the meta anymore, it's because they're all being used to sap me from the broadcast. That's why.
All I'm saying is it wasn't me, okay? Before you... That was an accusing gaze going on there. But you know, just to round out the previous game that we did see, it was just the odd rogue taking down the death rattle rogue, and again, we kind of saw this in the hunter matchup, funnily enough, versus Shudderwalk, which shouldn't happen. But it's just the death rattle decks are just a little bit too slow. The second you don't get that powerful opening to control the aggro deck, it means that you just lose it. And we just saw, even at the end, Team New Zealand were just saying, "Oh, we'll just play our hand out," because you do not have the cards really to deal with all of these minions, even though most of them are one drops.
Yeah, it was a shame. There was actually a couple of really interesting turns that I was trying to
I was just like,
to.
no.
I was like, no, if I can't hit you, I don't have to acknowledge you. This is my dream.
Actually true.
He just carried on. But yeah, I was kind of sat back watching it and enjoying some of the key turns. Tar Creeper versus Hedgehog Thug at one point,
Yes.
so it was really interesting. And then as the game developed, it was just the more aggressive opener that ran away with it. But now, with New Zealand at a 2-1 advantage, they're going to fall back on their Druid to be able to close out the series. It's going to come up against Warrior from Spain, and that is going to be Maui Druid versus, predictably, perhaps the odd Warrior on the other side.
Yeah, I think Warrior has not found much wiggle room, I'll say, in terms of deck. I know that Spain has brought the Odd Warrior deck that has the Quest, so there is a difference between just Odd Warrior and Quest Odd Warrior, but it is just a difference in saying, oh, I can actually end the control matchups, versus, okay, we just play this out to fatigue and see who gets there. There is a small answer, and I will say as well, just to mention, Team Spain, AK Wonder specifically, was talking very highly of their team's psychologist, who has actually helped them out a lot during global games in multiple ways, and pretty much said they would not be here if it wasn't for her.
Yeah.
He didn't actually give me a name, so I apologize about that, but there's the shout out, because he spoke very highly.
Yeah, I don't have her name either, but I do know she's of a very high pedigree. I believe she was actually the team psychologist for the Spain national women's basketball team as well, before working with them. So really, she's just trying to monitor the way they communicate with each other, monitoring their mindset, trying to make sure they're in the right competitive place to be able to function at the highest level on a stage in a high pressure environment like this.
Runde wieder vorbei.
AK Wonder basically gives all of the credit over to her at this point.
Yeah, and this is going to be important as well, because if there's ever a point where your mental state is tested,
Da hat doch gewonnen, oder?
one loss away from being knocked out of the huge finals of the
Ja,
tournament.
Neuseeland hat doch gewonnen.
To get to. And that's what's going to happen if New Zealand take this win.
Das ist
New
jetzt-
Zealand will move on to the lower stage of their group.
So war jetzt nicht so viel, ne?
Literally go home and say this a lot, but it will stay
Also,
on.
da was
Enjoy the show. That's, I guess, the
Nee, ist
silver
ja
lining
gut.
without the best convention in the world.
They will be escorted out of the building immediately. No
Krieger. Hm?
No BlizzCon for losers.
Haut den Krieger weg. Niemand kann Garrosh leiden.
Let's get to it.
Also die ganz Bekloppten,
There's a pretty slow hand as most Odd Warrior decks
die irgendwie anscheinend immer aggressive Idioten mögen, die alles zerstören.
Hold out versus the potential extreme damage that can come out from this Malagos Druid.
Yeah, you pretty much have one job in this matchup as the Warrior, and that's to press the button wherever possible. We're actually playing some games backstage on Ladder when we're just getting ready for this, and we're talking about how much different it is to know which Druid deck you're playing against, right? Because if you're playing against Maui Druid and you know that tank up is everything. You know that that's your key to winning the game, as long as you have answers for a couple of key minions in Lich King and Malagos and whatever else. If you view this matchup on Ladder, you have no idea if your Druid opponent is playing Togwaggle, in which case you have to do the opposite. Armor means nothing, you have to play your minions and curve out and actually try and pressure them. Or just concede, that's also viable too.
That's the real plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we see Dr. Boom being drawn, and that was a question I was going to ask you. A matchup where Dr. Boom probably doesn't even see the play, because the guaranteed armor up trumps the multiple different hero powers you can get, one of which is Blast Shield, which means that you do gain 7 armor, but that isn't reliable enough, at least in my opinion. You literally want to go max armor as possible in this game.
Yeah, the net loss on armor isn't huge, in terms of 1 every X you get for 7 armor hero power coming up, but sometimes you do need that consistent gain, right? Because you can't wait 4 or 5 turns to gain 7, because that allows your opponent to set up 2-turn kills in the gaps where they know that you don't have the armor gain.
Dion actually not bad, just as a playable minion and thing to do, because we talked a lot about you just armor up. You also can't just armor up if it's being negated by a tyrant on board, because then your hero powers spend mana, do nothing at that point. So we might see the hatch team come down just to get some work done. There's options for shield slam as well, but I think that's a bit too crazy just to deal with a 4-4.
Yeah, I want to go back to New Zealand's previous turn as well, where they had to spend a turn branching parts card drawing, which is normally a sign that things aren't really going to plan as the Mali Druid. Of course, a lot of intermediate players will think, well, you want to cycle through your deck and find your combo as rapidly as possible. Actually, the most successful Mali Druid hands are the ones that rely purely on Ultimate Infestation to draw cards, right? So branching paths can just be used to gain armor, just to get it out of your hand a lot of the time, or use it to buff minions to just push through an extra little bit of attack here and there. Using it to draw cards is usually a sign that you're a little bit desperate for missing pieces, which in New Zealand's case here was the ramp that they ended up picking up with the Wild Growth. They've been playing a very honest game here, and that's not what Druid is about.
Right, and one of the frustrations here is this hand, actually, when you look at the exact makeup of it, is quite difficult to get rid of. Normally you see a lot of Druid players just flush out their hand before turn 10, if they have UI available, so they could just refill it safely, not overdraw any key cards like Malagos. And we see now just Faceless going down and saying, okay, well this gets stuff out of my hand, I need to be able to empty it, because these swipes probably aren't going anywhere. All this Moonfire.
I love this already because already in this position in the game, you can see that Spain already up to 12 armor. That's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger with a 3-6 taunt in the way. So New Zealand recognize they need some kind of minion pressure to keep this armor gain under check. It's no good just them now ramping up towards a UI and trying to end the game with Malagos burn combos, because by the time they get there, the Warriors is going to be at 60, 70, 80 health with the tank ups. So Ting Tong and New Zealand just make the board play here, which I think is very, very smart for them to do.
Yeah, and quite difficult to commit to when it just doesn't happen that often, right? It's not your general win condition with this deck, so it definitely shows you a level of knowledge.
Ja, ich müsste die jetzt eigentlich mal verbrauchen. Die halten ja schließlich auch nicht ewig. Ja, danach müsste ich wieder anfangen, ein bisschen weniger zu essen, eigentlich wieder mehr trinken. Zwingt mich jetzt schon wieder so richtig.
Look at this as well, moving on to the later portions of the game and just more armor for Team Spain. It's really not what you're looking for. There's been a lot of pressure coming out of New Zealand somehow, and now this Nourish, indeed, Sol, this Nourish is bridging the gap, I would say. This is what
Mal
they
die
need to do. Look at this.
Hälfte des Videos, ey. Wenn wir das uns komplett angucken, ey, dann wären wir immer noch nicht fertig, wirklich. Selbst nicht mal in einer Woche oder so. Ich finde, es ist einfach zu viel. Aber
freely cast Ultimate Infestation without overdrawing, and to that end, the Nourish also let them get other cards out of their hand, discounting the Arcane Tyrant to 0 on that turn. That Nourish might just be that final ray of hope that New Zealand needed, because this game was quickly slipping away from them before that point.
It really was, and look at this now, even with the weapon equipped from Spain, it just doesn't really matter too much. Yes, they can kill the Ghoul and the 4/4 that's on the board with one swing, but they also just take so much damage, and the fact that it's not only the deal 5 make a 5/5, the draw 5 is the problem, because then they are just likely to have damage. They're getting to the combo extremely quickly.
I love this setup from Spain though, because they equip it, they sit there, they make it obvious that they know what the opponent is going to do, but essentially this is Spain saying to New Zealand, like, well, what are you going to do? Not draw 5 cards this turn?
Right,
no,
exactly.
Of course I am. I'm going to telegraph that I have the perfect answer set up to UI, and then you're just going to play it anyway because it's the best card in your deck, and your entire game plan essentially revolves around casting that card as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I wonder if actually we're going to see potentially a Reckless Flurry go down instead. Is that might be worse actually, because you lose the armor anyway?
Yep.
So do you just lose the health and then gain the armor and wait? Is probably a better idea to deal with the odd chance that Malagos just sits down on its own and you can take it out.
Right.
It's a tough call. And none of this is looking good for Team Spain, I'll say.
Those double shield block in hand could end up being a savior for Spain as well, not just purely because it's armor gain that can pull them out of range of lethals, but because if they do need to answer a big minion, you know, a Lich King or a Malagos, the way that New Zealand have been keeping up pressure means that Spain haven't been able to stack that armor total naturally to then just be able to clean shield slam an 8/8 or a 4/12. So those 2 shield blocks in hand might be just giving that security they need to be able to do that.
And an absolutely fine burn from Team New Zealand there. Bye, Nourish. We didn't want you anyway. We've outgrown you. Now we see the Florist, Malfurion, Lich King. Malygos is there, but without anything to combo it with, not really worth it. But there's still plenty of options. Interesting to see whether New Zealand actually want to just try and play the Lich King, just to get it out of the hand, so that Florist can actually get more of a targeted lowering of the mana cost, should I say, on one of the more key minions. But it looks like they're going Malfurion, and maybe they even play the mind control tech. Do you even need to hold it in this matchup?
Not particularly.
Or just deal 3 anyway. Who needs a 3-3 when your hero deals 3?
That was going to be my counter argument. Is that 3-3 going to deal more damage consistently than just swinging that damage down towards the face that you have guaranteed anyway? And I think the argument says that if you can deal damage for free in this matchup, then do so. The 3-3 can always come down later. Just make sure you're pushing that 3 every turn where you can with the Malfurion hero power.
Yeah, I like it. As long as New Zealand, which I'm sure they have considered when they can get rid of it, because you don't want Florist to hit it, right? You don't want a 0 mana 3-3 to just throw out there for no reason.
Right.
You really want it to target that Malygos. A weird board for Team New Zealand to try and deal with here. They do have a very high-powered spellstone, maxed up at 6, so Tazdingo, I'll send in Shield Master if you want the actual name.
Tazdingo!
Very efficiently.
Der Lichtkönig hat zugeschlagen.
You know it as well as I do. Come on.
Alright. We didn't even see that, I don't know what you're talking about.
Now Lich King down, picks up Army of the Dead with Mali and Dreampelt Florist already in hand. You sometimes just make those swing for the fences play when matchups are slipping away from you with an Army of the Dead, but it's not really what New Zealand are going to be looking for in this matchup now, the way things have been going.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth it, and I don't think New Zealand's like care that much about trying to go crazy. I think they're in a strong enough position. But what's going to be difficult, and I feel like positions like this with Mali Druid, and a lot, maybe Tog as well, is that the second you swap your plan slightly, you could lose the game. You need to have a very strict plan, know it's the correct one, and then execute it. All of which gets more difficult when, as you can see, you're in in-depth conversation with your 3 teammates, trying to work out what that plan even should be. Because I believe, especially with a deck like Mali, multiple people have different ways to play it out, and there's not a particularly correct and wrong way to do it a lot of the time.
This is a nice swing turn though from Spain. That big game Hunter inclusion does take care of the Lich King. Super Collider swings the board state. Now New Zealand are having to play from behind a little bit, and this is where the matchup can change, because this is where the pressure is relinquished. Because the pressure is relinquished, it means Spain can now start to build some armor total, but crucially for New Zealand, they don't have to wait too long to get the pressure going again with a big Malygos turn, since they do have this guaranteed Dream Petal discount after playing the Mind Control tech out at the same time. And I think this is why, part of the reason why it wasn't such a big problem for them to not play it on an earlier turn, even though you mentioned they needed it out of hand, any 10 mana turn they had available, they could just go Mind Control tech and Florist in the same turn and still get that guaranteed discount.
The only worry there is, I completely agree, but the worry is just, you know, if you get the fluke, for example, and then that changes based off the card when it changes when you play it, yeah, it can get a little bit tricky, but yeah, it works out very well, where they've just planned out and said, after 2 Tyrants, there isn't actually many minions even left, so it's highly unlikely they're going to draw more.
Yeah.
Team Spain have stacked up 13 armor now, so that, you know, they're in a much sturdier position than they were. But can they really just keep going? Because they're just under constant pressure, which feels weird coming from the Mali Druid deck. Yes, these Tyrants have a lot to answer for as far as Team Spain are concerned.
Spain know that they don't have too much left to answer except the straight up health total.
Is that a Dr. Boom I see?
Apparently it is.
Hero power as well, getting rid of this 3-3 just for the 2 mana that you had floating anyway. Not too bad. Did they? Okay. I was like, did they miss the attack there? I don't think so. Oh, Blast Shield next turn as well. Pretty big deal.
Oh man.
And now this is where it gets really tricky, because New Zealand now have to work out every which way they can win and every which way they can lose, because blast shields can happen quite often. Or this could be
Verhaftung kann aber auch ganz schön lang gehen, ey.
It's very tricky.
Alleine das erste Video ist doch schon 2 Stunden, ey.
46 for Spain is a pretty huge total. They do have the discounted Mali in hand. They do still have Blue to draw, so the plus 10 damage Malagos combo is very possible, but still no Twig to really like max that out in terms of damage, and like potentially add a UI on top of it afterwards as well. So for now, their damage output is looking like it's started to become limited about the amount against the amount of armor that Spain can generate.
How often does waiting for fatigue come into this matchup as the Mali Druid? With double naturalize, you try and just fatigue them for the extra damage you need to beat the armor.
I mean, I think pretty rarely, because you end up so far ahead in fatigue than the druid, than the warrior yourself, right? Just because you're playing the ultimate infestations and so on to draw from your deck in the first place, and that trying to be in a position where even though druids can gain a ton of armor themselves, so they're able to win the fatigue race is quite difficult for them.
Something you do have to consider sometimes. You have to see these like niche ways to actually win games, depending on how they get played out. The second Diehorn Hatchling, though, a card that does help, especially in the fatigue matchups, as we've seen in the mirrors sometimes, where the game's just about how many Diehorn Hatchlings can you play on your side of the board. Spreading Plague, branching paths for damage. Let's go. Chipping away with this Malfurion for 3 is a nice heads-up call because of how early they activated it. Malfurion came down, what, on 7, was it? 7 or 8? It was pretty early, and those 3 damage, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, do stack up and change the game quite dramatically.
Yeah, it came down on 9 mana, I believe.
Which could be turn 3 for all I know.
No, it was 10 mana, it was post-UI, because that was the turn where we had, like, was it Malfurion?
Oh, right, sure,
yeah. Was it just Malfurion Hero Power?
Could have been turn 4. No.
Who knows? Druid time, the world's greatest time zone.
These 1/1s are going to be able to clear up 1. These Spreading Plague Beetles. It's not worth a swing, right?
I wouldn't have thought so.
I feel like the window is getting progressively more closed versus New Zealand right now, as they've run out of steam and they've not got anything to actually go big with the Mali combo. They don't have both Moonfires, they do have the double swipes, but no way to get there, and this Mali's never living. There's too much armor now. You know there's the shield slams locked, loaded, and ready to go. Or at least one is fairly likely at this point. Yeah, there's flurry as well.
That's a big problem as well, because a lot of the time, when you start to feel the game slipping away from you as the Mali Druid, one of the gambits you can set up is you take your Mali turn and you double swipe face, and then hope that cuts off the armor total, so that they then can't gain 12 back again to be able to shield slam the Malagos. There's so much armor being built up now that it's even becoming difficult for you to even do that.
Just like, yeah, nice try, friend. Shield slam.
Of course, Spain have access to things like Iron Beak Owl as well, which can stem the bleeding if they end up not having enough armor.
Wir haben es dann irgendwann mal später. Kann nur sowas so lang gehen. Das tue ich mir an. Das über die ganzen Dings hinweg dann, über alle Runden.
The team will be discussing right away. How much damage can we do this turn? How much damage can we follow up with? What damage do we need to do?
Nein.
Damage another way? Do we hero power? Do we not hero power?
Ich mache das jetzt nur gleichzeitig, weil ich mittlerweile einen ganz schön massiven Druck mit diesem Scheiß habe. Könnte sein, dass die nächste Woche nämlich nicht mehr da sind. Außerdem hätte ich da hier keine Zeit, weil ich nächste Woche ein gewisses Spiel spielen will. Na, deswegen muss ich jetzt hier deswegen hetze ich mich gerade. Oh, ja, zum Wochenende müssen wir auf jeden Fall uns sputen, Alter. Ganzen Tage, am besten nur noch diese Videos. Nichts anderes, ey. Das ist schlimm, sag mal, wenn du hinterher hängst, ja.
New Zealand would have time to swing it because they're not down anytime soon. But Spain have a little card on the far left. I don't know if you can see it because
Was
they're
zur
holding
Hölle?
quite a few.
Guck der her.
In fact,
Ja, das
just
freut
a
mich
use
auch.
which says a hard pass on this big combo turn, and that might also be a hard pass on the game at this point. Going with a swipe
Das
right now.
Gebiet der Dunkelheit.
I guess this is a signal from New Zealand that they have to cast
Ja, ja.
this UI to max out on their damage here. Understanding that it's very, very unlikely this twig ever goes off and they get to have the.
Das Abenteuer hat nicht mal begonnen. Ich habe schon Charaktere geschaffen, die ich jetzt schon kenne.
Swipe to move past UI where they use their twig refresh on. So just understanding that they need to kind of clear out
Was
some
genau wird das da eigentlich?
Die Weltkarte für unser RPG?
Ah ja.
So grob will ich
Team
reden.
Spain.
Ich meine, das sind ja schon alles richtig riesige Landmassen, ne?
Job done anyway.
Besonders das ist schon richtig groß.
Just need to
Und dann kommst du in den Norden.
slip.
Das ist alles Eis.
When you've got news to just beat Twig
Jetzt
late
guck dir
game
das mal
as
im
well.
Verhältnis an.
Twig literally just dealt 1 damage.
Und,
Cost 4 mana into this game.
naja, riesig ist relativ, kommt nur drauf an, wie weit man oben schaut, ne?
You're looking at Daihon hatchling number 3, I think, this game.
It looks like
Wie viele Kilometer du da oben bist und das überblicken kannst.
That's sweet.
Was?
Das ist genau dasselbe Verhältnis
Yeah,
jetzt.
I like the shield block timing most of all from Spain here because that swipe on the previous turn was the first time any kind of indication
Okay.
that New Zealand might be trying to
Okay, im Norden sitzen ja auch die ganzen
straight away
Eisriesen.
Spain said, okay, if we'll just
Let's go.
Eisriesen, was
score
sonst.
on you and start
All
playing
diese
our shield.
großen, kalten Viecher.
Look at the Steambot instead, just to say, well, if you do stick
Ist
a
halt
minion,
kalt da, ne?
get through that.
Musst du ein paar Socken mehr anziehen.
Will still be cleaned up relatively easy, I imagine.
Und eine Mundhose.
Ja, das muss ich auch später irgendwie mich warm anziehen, ey.
It's kind of weird how quickly this game looked to slip
Wir haben
away.
jetzt schon beinahe 0 gerade.
Such a large delay between
Oh.
most of the combo and then a
Ey, ist
way
jetzt schon
to
Winterkälte,
finish it,
obwohl nicht mal
either
Winter
twig
ist.
or even just having an earlier
Ja, die
flip,
Wärme
just
hat
kind
lange
of
genug gehalten.
Ja, aber ich finde, die Kälte kommt auf einmal zu schnell nach unten.
and obviously at one
Wir haben
point,
dafür
no
schon lange nicht mehr
right?
richtig
So
kalt.
that could have been dangerous. They could have just died, but the final piece of
Freue
the
mich nicht,
puzzle,
wenn es so
they
minus
couldn't
16
turn
oder
over
so
New
sind.
Zealand.
Oh Gott.
And that might
Ja, aber
be,
mal Zeit. Besonders, dass auch mal Schnee fallen
for these
wird.
guys.
Ja gut, da dinge dich jetzt nicht.
Through the matchup, you know, like Lich King
In
sticking
den letzten Jahren, da war nicht so viel damit.
Da liest du 3 Meter Schneebäcke.
that or just assembling like ramp into UI and command.
Bist du
Das ist
schön?
so eine Schneise ziehen.
Ja, wenn du rausgehst.
One step short of all of those
Kannst von
options.
unten.
They got literally down in a strong position, but Spain did have They bid
die
that one
eigentlich
piece away, which was the twig
finde
in
ich
this
so.
case, being able to finish the combo.
Warum eigentlich nicht?
And even if they did get it
Ja, so
early,
richtig
it
schöner,
has
fetter
been
Schnee.
from Spain to be able to shut it down at any point they want to. So yeah, I think the assessment of just one step away is pretty astute with the situation in this game.
Plus, as well, these like multiple blast shields just look good right now. They're just, you know, there was a couple of others they didn't get, but I think this is blast shield number 3 so far, Boom, which is actually just pretty solid. As you said, on average, it kind of works out flat, doesn't it? Except you get some other tools now and again. One shield slam used there to kill off the matriarch, but again, it just has to be an assumption from Team New Zealand that the shield slam number 2, there's reckless flurry.
Shoot.
That guess what? If there's double Mally get played and you don't die, who cares if you have armor or not anymore? As long as there's enough to clear the Mallies, but then you win because there's no way to actually deal any further burst damage and finish up the game. I don't mind this as well. You float in the mana, and also there's no spreading plagues left. Oh, sorry, there's only one spreading plague left, so you just go wide for the minions. This becomes a very straightforward play now. New Zealand having no cards left, just simply have to go for it and see what happens. Here comes the swipe, double Moonfire for maximum damage.
Boah, noch ein Moonfire hinterher, ey.
It surprises me the amount of damage that comes out from turns like that.
Yep.
Zweimal rufgedrescht, ey.
Is available to cut down one of these Mallies.
Oh, so, wir waren schon unten jetzt.
So that Moonfire being the last remaining card in the deck for New Zealand
Ein
has allowed
Schild
them
in der
to
Krieg
push
aufgebaut
the
hat, der einfach weggehört, noch gut zu leben jetzt, ey.
Because Spain is struggling
Warum
to find
nicht?
a completely clean answer to all of this board state.
Yeah, I mean, you can swing the weapon into the 412 to kill off the 3-4 and silence the 412.
Yeah. put a dial matriarch in the way face damage, for example.
I think so. Because also as well, as all that Spain have to do now
Weil
is
es sich
just
dann bestimmt
survive a couple of
wendet.
turns, because UI will just kill New Zealand very soon.
Wenn ich mir die Zeit so angucke, wird das auf jeden Fall ein Kopf an Kopf rennen.
Okay, they're going for this way.
Yeah, choosing to go for rushing dynamatics here instead, which, yeah, if both of these hit 5, then the second Mally goes down. Oh, this is way better. You actually end up getting a perfect full clear. You know that all your opponent has left is an
Oh, der Druide hat keine Karten mehr.
The other card, of course, is Spreading Plague. They will know that as well, but it's not relevant in terms of, you know.
Oh no!
Und der hat nur noch die paar Karten da.
So the cards that they have to worry about are a
Sieht
UI
ziemlich beschissen aus,
that could be damaged, be it Death or Decay.
wenn er so weitermacht.
But in this case, it is just a completely useless army of the dead, and New Zealand are going to rip out the ultimate infestation, get their 5-5 on board, and this is now well and truly their final.
Junge, du bist so am Arsch. Du kannst gleich aufgeben. Du hast nur noch 2 Karten.
We can see a Daihon Matriarch in the hand, which just says, no. How about that? No naturalizers left, of course. No way to really remove this without dying themselves, as this fatigue is starting to add up. And most importantly, this Matriarch is going to kill this 5-5 if it trades in.
I think the looks on
Ja,
Spain's
beschissen.
face right now is they're trying
Ja, hätte er noch ein paar Karten gehabt, der würde eventuell siegen, aber das wird nicht so sein.
Just asked, so there's a shake of the head, like, yeah, I'm not sure what it is, and then there's options as to which Lich King card they can potentially play around as well, right? Because things like Obliterate could take care of the Diamond Matriarch and then push damage.
Der ist
Even
richtig
that's
am
an enormous
Arsch.
amount of damage to take yourself when you're fatiguing for this much.
Right.
But I think
Death Coil as well can be a problem, just to push face.
I think no matter what conclusion that you come to, Diehorn Matriarch and Zola just ends up being the play anyway, and yeah,
Ja,
there
das musste sein.
after a marathon of a game number 4, it is
Ging ja anders.
all square, 2 games to 2 now. Spain picking up the victory at its specific of New Zealand. Before we last
Ja.
cards out of their hand to play
Oh,
around.
Krieger gegen Paladin.
But it's not necessarily something you need to keep in your opening hand because it's more important to get that consistent start going a lot of the time and push through damage.
Alter, dass die denn auch noch lange gehen.
In my opinion, when you get to the position in the game where you're emptying your hand as the power,
Heilige Scheiße.
the divine favor, you're already in
Wie
warrior
viele
country
Videos
at
sind
that
das
point,
eigentlich
right?
von
If you're
Hearthstone? Ich will nicht mehr.
reaching
Actually,
turn 7, turn 8, that kind of position where the warrior can really start take control of the matchup.
Because again, you start to look at this, it seems very strange for both ways, because cards like Ziliax are still just a problem, because if they beat down armor, it heals, and it still requires multiple attacks to go through. So see what happens here, the mulligan, the divine favor was kept, and then there's Firefly, and then the Ray Leader along with that hero power, of course, always present with the off-pounding deck. Whereas New Zealand, not looking too hot, at least for the immediate early game. Shield block, not too bad to just cycle through and skip through some of the deck. Oof, good hammer.
Yep.
I love it already.
So Gelson in the background really leading the conversation on this opening, and I think that this is just long-term planning here in terms of what does our curve look like over the multiple turns to come, not just considering whether they play Firefly on one.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one, because I feel like with Odd Paladin, because of your hero power so good in almost every situation, you really need to plan it out to be most mana efficient as possible, to create as much pressure as possible every single turn. So I feel like the second you don't do it well one turn, you've just given your opponent a huge window to actually make a comeback in any given game. Very tough as far as I'm concerned. Even now, hero power, does Coin Weapon do anything better? Do you put 2 1-drops as a 1-2 and a 1-3 instead of just 2 1-1s? Then are you afraid of, or are you not afraid of just having the hero power? Because as you mentioned earlier, there aren't really any whirlwind effects that are natural. It's Dynamatic, which deals 1 damage.
Double 1-drop here instead of the hero power. This is a signal from Spain, in my opinion, that they want to rush through to this divine favor as quickly as possible. And so they're perhaps looking at a 3-drop into Coin Fungal Lancer into then that's the divine favor turn on 5 potentially. But still, it's, you know, always a sign of something potentially amiss when the hero power doesn't come down on turn 2, when you're playing cards instead. But I think in this position, it is perhaps justifiable.
Yeah, I think as well there's something to be said of Spain kept Divine Favor, and they are playing like they want to cast Divine Favor.
Absolutely, it's consistent.
And that's correct, but you also don't want to get locked into a plan before the game's even started, right? Because you don't want to say, oh, well, we really want to cast this Divine Favor, so let's just do this, because it makes it a little bit better. So I do think it's the right play, but I think it's important to keep an eye on how it progresses here. So you do see Dynomatic in Mages and Team New Zealand's hand right now, along with Mind Control Tech, a Brawl. Even the Diehorn Action is a little bit awkward for Paladin to deal with due to its high health total. So what I'm saying is, Team New Zealand have some pretty good cards in the hand.
They do. That is basically a greatest hits of this matchup there in New Zealand's hand.
Again, this is just 100% planning out turns.
Well, it means it's not going to be a raid leader turn if they're sending the attacks through first.
Der mal überhaupt noch sein
Yeah,
Charakter hier irgendwo?
It was bad. You hope with the power of 4 minds that someone would have caught that you have to attack after you play the raid leader.
Would have been a great highlight if not though.
Also hier scheinbar nicht.
Hat er schon wieder verschlammt.
Where do you sit on the value of Mind Control Tech in this matchup? Do you want to wait till something's come down, or do you want to get ahead? Just say, you get -1 token, I get +1 token, and a 3/3.
So I think it's like, I think hand context is huge. I think if you don't have a brawl, if you don't have a reckless flurry, you should try and be a little bit greedier and use it against their level up turn, right?
Exactly,
so like the power of the swing becomes a lot more powerful, but since New Zealand have the security to say, hey, if you have your level up turn, I can just Diehorn Hatchling in the way of it, I can brawl it if I need to.
Right.
Dynamatic clears. I'm not necessarily going to be playing Mind Control Tech on that turn anyway, so I'm just going to make the swing happen here.
All of these options are pretty good versus Paladin. The 2/6 lifesteal taunt. There's the Eternium Rover to gain armor, and there's one of my favorite cards actually, the Security Rover, to just create more taunts. And with this brawl, and most importantly the Dynomatic, if New Zealand get time to just play a Security Rover, that could be a big problem for Spain to even get through these 2-3 taunts that get made. It's quite difficult outside of level up for Spain to efficiently kill this Rover with all of these little tokens. And it only snowballs to get worse after that.
Yeah, it's the other upside of just playing out the Mind Control Tech on the previous turn is that you curve so nicely into Dynomatic this way, because you know you have the option to trade away your minions where you see fit, and then you potentially you're able to clear a bigger board with Dynomatic that way.
Obviously, the Fungomancer get coined out, which I think was the plan from almost turn 1 at this point. And landing not on the tokens, because the tokens have an inherent threat because of that level up card that's in the deck. So you want to spread your threats onto the minions that don't matter as much and say, well, normally you can't kill them all, so pick what you want to do. There are pros and cons to both. Very strong turn from Team Spain, and Team New Zealand have to sort of pay attention right now, because this is starting to stack up to just a lot of damage without a lot of commitment, to be completely honest.
Lass mal raus.
Ein Stück kannst du mir mal geben.
Comes the Dynomatic on turn 5, but with a 3/5 on the board. Ooh, never mind. That was absolutely perfect. Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a good play.
It is, yeah.
They didn't play around Dynomatic. What? I always forget that when I have another it doesn't hit my own minions when I play Dynomatic every time, and it'll hit one. I'm like, oh yeah, it's mechs, not enemy minions. Mainly because I don't play Odd Warrior that much, I'll be completely honest.
But now, brushing that aside, we do have now potentially that Divine Favor setup that Spain has been looking for a long time. They've actually been quite fortunate, in fact, to have picked up double 1-drop. In the 2 turns since I called that out originally, they actually drew 1-drop to be able to go 1/1 Divine Favor after the Fungomancer turn, which I was talking about previously, which is honestly very, very strong in this position.
Also, funnily enough, the 2 1-drops just create the correct size board of 3 minions. So playing around Brawl, is it going to be Reckless Flurry? Probably not, because one's at 3/5 for a start. But wow, are they going like... okay. So now they're kind of, I feel at least, veering away a little bit from the hard Divine Favor cast. I wonder how that's going to play out going forward.
The security rover being played, mainly because it's 5 health, means that there isn't a clean trade available on board, which means 2-3 taunts get summoned before that dies, on paper.
In theory, yes.
But we can see a Blessed Might, of course, that can put paid to that plan and only deal with 1-2-3 taunt, but even that's a bit of a pain. Did it? They just send it on to the dome, as Mr. Everbull would say.
I think you then give your opponent a little bit too much control over the situation because, you know, the 2-5 into a 2-2 raid leader and summon a 2-3 taunt is just an incredible trade. You need to be able to this, it really does.
That's just a good card right now.
Don't get me wrong, this is not pleasant in any way, but losing your raid leader and then having to deal with the same situation next turn anyway, you'll probably just end up worse off.
Sure. I can see it. I always do consider just the face play when there's Leroy in hand, though. I will say that. It's always something to think about. But the board's been effectively remade to most extents to Spain be able to just press that button, as always, generate the 2 1-1s, and... Okay, Corridor Creeper is committed this turn, and again, maybe just a nod to saying, well, let's just keep empty in the hand. Azalina. Wait, what? Play around Divine Favor.
It sure would. New Zealand fire off the Omega Assembly for 1 again, and they do pick up another Dynomatic. Huge pickup for them.
That's why the card's so powerful. It's like the warrior mechs are actually the only like class mechs that are very powerful, I would say. Because we can see a paladin mech on the board, but it's not that much better than a 1-3, a natural 1-3, right? Or tribalist, should I say. Okay, New Zealand choosing to just reduce the overall power of this board without committing to a card like Brawl. Also, it softens up a good chunk of the board for potentially this Dynomatic going forward.
Nice +1 attack on the ball, though.
Segen.
Spain have had their mauls treat them pretty well this game. The first one helping them build a board, the second one helping them to push with it. That is exactly what they wanted in this spot, and now they do find themselves a 4-card Divine Favor.
That's a good one.
Right on time.
This lines up extremely well with that maul draw. Now, look at the power. Suddenly, Fungomancer, Blessing of Might, Leroy Jenkins, a lot of just on-demand damage in most instances. Obviously, Fungomancer being a bit reliant on minion board.
Yeah.
But still, this is a lot of damage pushed that New Zealand kind of didn't want to take this turn, or shouldn't have took this turn in most circumstances. And now one of the issues is, based on New Zealand's hand, they can only do one thing this turn. They can Dynomatic, or they can Brawl, or they can Hatchling. You know, they can't do both. They can't Brawl into a Dynomatic to fully guarantee a clear on the board. Shield Block was a good pickup though, because it still gives them the 5 mana options, as well as giving them 1 extra draw to see what happens. So where's Dynomatic goes, those 4 tokens want to go away as far as New Zealand are concerned. 3 out of 4, definitely not a bad outcome.
Yeah, reasonable for sure. New Zealand been very, very reserved with their Brawl usage this game, just trying to use their other removal where they can, and you can see them kind of paying for it with their health total, right? Not that I'm trying to present that as a bad thing, but they could quite easily be, you know, 5 or 10 points higher here, but without some of these powerful resources in there.
Yeah, what surprises me about the holding of the Brawl, say, that turn, is that they've seen both Lost in the Jungles now. So there isn't the insta-build-a-board level up turn to their Brawl. You just get 2 tokens a turn flat for the rest of the game, outside of played minions, of course. They're running out of options. Just Fungomancer number 2. His minions just won't die. It's just 16. Get him. And I said about, do you just go face? You have to always consider it, because you always add in, apart from taunt sometimes, plus 60 damage from hand in any given turn because of Leroy. The Blessed of Might got a lot of work from there as well, and suddenly New Zealand are in back in Paladin country, if you would like to call it as. They've just not been able to get a grasp and keep this board clear for more than a turn.
This is interesting, by the way, the summoning of the 2 additional 1-1s. I think Spain perhaps give credit credit to New Zealand for not having brawl.
Right, because they dodged it.
Because of how greedy they've been with it. Those two 1-1s did just create an outcome where the big board swing could come out. Imagine if this was a significantly bigger minion and not one of those tokens that didn't have to be summoned on the previous turn from Spain.
Yeah, I mean, they committed on the corridor creep, right? It was 8 attack. That minion alone, and I think we saw Däumchen just wince when there was the 1-1 left over, and I think there might have been a bit of, oh, we made that happen to a certain extent. We really did not need to press that button. Maybe Phantom Militia's the pick here, just for some overall, just build a board of your own, even though it's not the tokens you're after. It could get some help done, maybe even if you play it this turn. I think tokens are probably okay, actually. Just press the hero power.
Yeah, you're starting to reach the point now where one brawl was used. One brawl that you probably had a read your opponent didn't have in the first place because they were scrapping so hard for removal. Then that's the other tools of removal that they've used, right? A Dynamatic's been used, an extra Dynamatic has been used off in a Mega Assembly as well. So it's probably time for Spain to
Oh Gott, die von außen werden, glaube ich, die längsten sein, ey. Links Movement. Wobei, die von Overwatch oder von Heroes könnten länger sein. Eventuell.
Can you even kill this Leroy? As we've mentioned earlier, this is not Warrior with Whirlwinds. They don't have it.
Wie lange soll die denn auf YouTube hochladen, ey? Vielleicht wäre es sogar einfach ein als Livestream zu machen. So kenne ich mich nicht mehr mit aus.
I think I just like the double die horn a bit more. Because you can continue to gain armor from the rover.
You get a value trade off the rover that way.
I don't know.
It's not a value trade that kills a minion, but it sticks around on board and starts gaining more armor on top of that.
Does it mean that they can stagger their boards? And I guess with Leroy down and there's Blessed and Might's gone, there's Maul's been used. There probably isn't just a lot of damage direct from hand available left in the deck.
Na los, macht schon, mein Knäckebrot wartet.
Haven't even been equipped yet. Spain playing 2 Vine Cleavers. There's still Void Ripper for some shenanigans, but outside of that, we've seen pretty much most of the deck at this point.
Oh, so spät schon. Ich weiß nicht, ob wir noch ein weiteres Video schaffen, ey. Wenn es ein bisschen kürzer vielleicht ist, könnte man es vielleicht. Na, wer beißt ins Gras? Ich bin schon fast der Meinung, Neuseeland beißt ins Gras.
Spain just what they want to commit here. Across Veteran is a weird card in that, you know, normally abusive side was always this card that you played last because it had so much tempo
Mal gucken.
that it was always better to
würde eigentlich gerne first.
But since so many one drops now have one attack, that actually getting an Across Veteran on board
Ja, müssen wir mal sehen.
permanent.
Ich finde den Witcher zweimal und diese ganzen kleinen Dinger los. Eigentlich ganz so
Ja, wir können den
nicht
nicht.
so OP.
Ja. Also, man kann ja den nächsten Jahr eventuell mal spielen.
The Primordial, this second Dion Hatchling, along with the Stonehill, of course, from Team New Zealand, probably thinking, nah, they've not got us this turn. Primordial Drain does
Natürlich wird das dauern, bis wir dann. Ja. Weil ich musste Ark aus ganz schöner Not runterwerfen, ey. Weil der hat auf einmal war so wenig Platz auf meinem Ding, ey. Alter, ich weiß gar nicht, wo das herkam plötzlich. Ich musste den leider nur gedrungen runterwerfen, ey. Ey, das war so beschissen. Die paar GB, die ich nur noch hatte, ey, also das war gar nicht feierlich. Jetzt muss ich erst mal gucken, dass ich so die Sachen, die ich überhaupt nicht an Spiele brauche, dass ich die alle runterwerfe. Erstmal. Und noch ein bisschen an Sachen bereinige, damit ich die wieder aufpacken kann. Ich meine mal ganz ehrlich, 121 GB ist ganz schön, ey. Ist, boah. Mal Warcraft hat zu viel. Also das ist schon ganz schön krank, ey.
Yeah, this vine cleaver is going to have to do a
Also
lot
denke ich, was das Wort nicht so
cleaving
viel
of
hat.
vines and cleaving of New Zealand at this point, because this is pretty much the
Aber
last
ich
ditch
finde, für
attempt
sowas ist es ja schon
that,
heftig,
Team Spain have to even win
120.
this game and survive in this tournament.
Ach, Leute.
Jenny Rover as well, not bad.
I just want to point out, Spain, be it by design or not, actually played very nicely around Primordial Drake this turn. Like, this still looks like a great Primordial Drake, don't get me wrong, but the fact they left a 2-3 in play and then didn't trade
Na,
their Divine Shield
oh,
was
das ist
actually
jetzt so ein knappes Ding hier
Yeah, I
irgendwie.
was gonna say, it could have been worse, is the point, right? Could have been a lot worse. This Rover, though.
Beiden sind irgendwo auf Gleichstand gerade.
Second Vine Cleaver. More of an insurance policy at this point, because there are still 2 whole swings at this one. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, although I'll double check. Oh, there is no weaponry. Oh, sorry, there is an ooze left in Spain's deck. They didn't ooze earlier, right? I'm not going crazy.
New Zealand's deck?
Sorry, New Zealand's deck.
Könnte ein bisschen schlecht aussehen.
There's the Elise, but there is no
Den
removal
kleinen
option in
Faller.
hand right now for Mage and for New Zealand, and they will know that they have yet to be leveled up this game, which means that they are staring down a potentially lethal board even on the following turn.
That must be terrifying, if I'm going to be honest. Also, so the problem with Elise is it shuffles a pack, which, yes, the pack's good, it gets you a lot of cards in hand, but you've also got removal tools in your deck and taunts that you want to draw instead of a pack of Ungoro cards.
Yeah. Thankfully, due to the power of Tank Up and the Attorney Rover trade, they do get well out of range of any likely lethal, even with level up plus another card. Still, Spain are just having to soldier on right now with basically the deck, the card that makes this entire deck function. Like, without level up, this really wouldn't be a deck to consider playing. And Spain are currently making a really good go of outlasting one of the most late-game decks in existence without having access to it.
Yeah, and I think, funnily enough, Spain might skip equipping this Vine Cleaver this turn and bank at least 1 swing, guaranteed next turn no matter what.
You have 2 level ups in your deck though. What if you draw one of them on the next turn and you don't have the Vine Cleaver equipped already?
What if your Vine Cleaver dies before you can even swing at all?
You got 2 extra 1/1s out of it? I don't know.
But you didn't, right? Because you can't swing this turn, they've already swung.
No, you're right.
Tough one, really is. And I think that's the whole discussion right now is, do we float 7 mana we don't need to?
I don't like this. I personally think I'm equipping the Vine Cleaver here because, like, I don't know exactly how many cards are left. We don't have that info on screen, but the Warrior has drawn so many fewer cards than you have, right? Because you've cast Divine Favor this game. You have 2 level ups in your deck. They have 1 ooze. As the aggro deck, I'm down to take risks here and play to the level up top deck.
Oh, it's actually not a bad turn. Wait, do they want to take 9?
Das ist knapp, das ist alles sehr knapp.
Probably have to, right? The Void Ripper and the Vine Cleaver. Trade the 2-1 and the weapon in. Take 8, sorry, because they attacked him first. Apologies.
Na, was machst du? Ja, viel Möglichkeiten hast du eigentlich nicht, Junge.
So if they choose to go for the minion attacks, they end up with 1 minion
Das
left
musst
on
du ja
the
jetzt
board.
riskieren.
If they don't, they keep the full board, but then again, the Vine Cleaver creates an additional +2
Wenn du den
minions
weghaben
anyway.
willst.
So I think I like preserving the health here.
And by the way, since we debated this so heavily on the previous turn, if this Vine Cleaver was equipped on the turn before, you have enough mana this turn to then hero power as well.
Yeah.
So not equipping it on the previous turn, not only does it not play to a level up top deck on the turn immediately afterwards, it also plays worse into level up top decks for the preceding turns that come afterwards, right? You actually cut yourself back on 1/1s over the course of the game.
Definitely true. This Dynamatic though, kind of a weird moment here because if this righteous protector wasn't on the board, this turn could be nice because you could trade the
Dann los, Leute, ihr habt nicht viele Möglichkeiten, doch mehr.
and just guarantee a clear. But with this Elise now, it just feels awkward.
Macht was.
Going off your own minion if you're a little bit unfortunate, and leaving stuff on the board for your opponent. It's very scary. Sol here looking up into the sky doing the odds.
Yeah,
I'm going to commentate that instead.
I know. I wasn't. I was.
Numbers. 1,
I
2,
was
5,
thinking
6.
about Baku play instead. Like potentially, like how likely are you to die, which I believe is exactly 0% in that position, and then you're actually just setting up lethal for yourself potentially. You're making the paladin scared of being aggressive.
Das war jetzt irgendwie lol.
I think the fear is that it doesn't directly set up lethal for the following turn, so if they then do it, they don't really prevent Riku and Spain from going really wide on the board following that, and
They miss
then,
4 armor.
then they are dead to level up for sure, but level up just does not want to come to Spain this game.
It's pretty incredible to be honest. This is just Baku wars now.
Yeah.
This board can be cleared up on New Zealand side at least, with Elise and the Dynamatic being gone, because this Void Ripper did live and be able to clear this off. I think you may as well. There's no great answers to this 7-8 now, apart from a Shield Slam. And this draws you, Reckless Flurry.
Okay, das ist ein bisschen gefährlich jetzt.
You have to, right?
If you're playing Baku this turn, I think you really had to consider playing Baku last turn, because it's a very similar spot to what you were in, and that one card of difference might have come back to bite New Zealand in this spot.
Level Up finally turns up. Quite rightly so, as I believe there's like 3 cards left or something in Team Spain's deck. Maybe a couple more, but certainly not many. Funnily enough, the trades become a bit strange, right?
Trades, you say?
Well, I'm saying that I think you have to just quickly think about, I don't think it can be done, but think about if you hit them down to 0 armor and you level up, then Hero Power, Reckless Flurry happens and they have a Baku. So is there anything else that can clear off?
You also have a Baku.
Is there anything else along with that that kills your own Baku and leaves theirs alive? That's the problem. Like Shield Slam.
I think if you're in a world where you're playing against like 3 cards from the Warrior and you think they're like an
Okay. Alles klar. Der Paladin hat gewonnen.
But then you also have someone alongside you telling you you're being stupid.
And we just displayed exactly how HGG team works.
That was my point.
Alter, alleine wie das schon aussieht. Könnte das auf jeden Fall gewinnen jetzt. Was sein?
Is this like a pass? As in 0 attacks from Ziliax? They've used the owl, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's any merit in gaining the 3 right now.
Das ist, wenn du die beiden jetzt angreifen lässt. Das wird nicht.
If I was on New Zealand, I would not want them to soak to it.
Das ist beschissen knapp, Alter.
And look at the level of conversation between Team Spain and Delta. Like, what's going on? What's happening?
Okay, das war's.
2 level ups in a row, and actually rewinding. I think the one turn where Baku wasn't played, and then the turn after where Baku was played, and I kind of called out like what was the difference between those 2 turns.
Mann, greif einfach an. Hör auf da zu zögern, greif dir einfach an und beende das. Meine Fresse.
New Zealand drew the Reckless Flurry, and I think that was their trigger point to then say, okay, now we can go for the Baku.
Mal ganz ehrlich, ich weiß gar nicht, was das jetzt soll.
Then we have our AoE turn, and then we end the game.
Okay, this next draw could just decide the game at this
Wird
point.
das jetzt?
Extremely close with both players.
Hätte angreifen können. Der war mit dem Schlag beendet.
Lethal, the Super Collider is going to clear off the 3-3s, get rid of those taunts, and Baku is going to go to face for one of these teams, and New Zealand survive. And the Hearthstone
Will sagen, was das jetzt war?
on their first match on stage, a 3-2 victory for New Zealand over Spain.
I just want to point out a judge from the
Ich weiß
player
nicht, was die anderen Karten auf dem Feld gemacht hätten. Ob das eine
I think both, or at least New
Ding ist,
Zealand, are
dass
just
das
relieved
umlenkt,
more
weiß
than
ich nicht.
anything.
Den Karten vielleicht auf dem Feld verhindert oder
Felt
was?
like it was very intense. We said there were both there were ways for both teams to win. It's not an easy.
Für mich wäre das eigentlich eigentlich sah es da ziemlich leicht aus für den Pala, aber naja.
Extreme
eigentlich gut.
Er hätte nur einmal zuschlagen müssen. Er hätte genug gehabt. Das bin ich jetzt irgendwie jetzt ja nicht. Gut. Ich kenne auch nicht alle Karten.
Yeah, that's the thing as the warrior, you're always
Ja.
like one